Back to album reviews. So last time I did Deja Intendu by Brand New. And now this time I want to get into one of probably my rarest and the most elusive albums for me to find on vinyl record. Here I have Brand New, Your Favorite Weapon, with the 2 chess pieces. You know, this is from the original iodine press. This is Translucent Blue. I believe it's out of 200. So this was not a very cheap record by any means, but I did luck out by selling. It was kind of like a 3-way thing where I bought this off of eBay because I sold Story So Far's While You Were Sleeping, their original, I guess, demo, EP, whatever, to someone else. It was like $20 down, I think. But still, you know, I'll take that trade any day, basically. So I was very happy with getting this and adding it to my collection. To me, that was my first exposure into really angsty music and really iconic music. I'm not the type of person to buy a record and never listen to it. I'm gonna jam it, I'm gonna play it, I'm going to enjoy it as much as I can. These things aren't cheap, it's not a cheap hobby, so I'd rather get the most enjoyment out of it as I can. And this is definitely one of those records where I'm just gonna play. I have it, I'm really happy that I have it. Would I buy another one? Probably. And I'm really glad that I found this one because I do not like the anniversary artwork. Let's get into the album. I picked up this album in Best Buy probably like '09. It was like high school. I think it might have been like sophomore year of high school. I plugged it in, you know, I listened to it and I said, wow, this is what it feels to be a teenager, what it feels to be 16 to 18 years old. I can see why they don't want to play these songs as much. It kind of feels a little childish, as weird as that sounds coming from someone who's 23. It's okay to feel those things and to be angsty as a kid, but eventually you gotta kind of mature a little bit and you kind of be able to really feel something in an adult way. And I think this album really kind of helped me realize that while it's okay to be angsty and okay to feel like you haven't got everything figured out, eventually there's a point where it doesn't become as relatable. So it's definitely interesting to see how much they changed from this to go to Deja. And, you know, their whole discography is so different and so not scatter, but definitely maturing and definitely a growing older type of thing, that it made sense that they started here and then they just kind of built the blocks to move up. So let's get into the actual songs. So Shower Scene starts off in a really big way and starts off really fast and it gets you into this energy. It gets you kind of pumped up and gets you ready to be, you know, entertained. It gets you ready to unleash a little bit of anger. It's such a great way to start this album in a truly pop punk way. A good intro song should be able to, 1, get you interested in the rest of the album, and 2, introduce the moods or mood that's going to be present in the rest of it. And Shower Scene does that in a really good way. And then it transitioned into Jude Law, one of their best songs and most recognizable songs. It's a little threatening thinking about what the lyrics are and what they're directed towards and why. As I think about it, I realize I'm thinking about these lyrics and I'm thinking about what they meant to me back then, what they mean to me now, and how I can dissect and remove myself from that situation and realize that, well, it wasn't that complicated, wasn't that difficult. And I feel like the lyrics were written in a very moody way, in an angry way. And while everyone will be very excited to sing them back to the band while they're being played, I feel like the band doesn't want that message out there anymore. So while they probably will play Shoko at live shows, they're probably not going to play much else off of Your Favorite Weapon. The discography show was a really generous thing for them to do, to give these fans an opportunity to hear these songs that they honestly probably don't feel much for anymore. So then comes Sudden Death. If you listen to like the hush vocals during the bridge part, it's another one of those where it's like really, really dark. But again, it's written in angsty fashion. I think one negative thing to say about Your Favorite Weapon is how one-dimensional it can be in terms of the lyrics and in terms of the theme. You're 18 years old, you know, you're gonna feel those things. That's probably my one downside about the album, how it can feel very thematically. It's not uninteresting, it's just very constant about its emotions, whereas Deja and Devil God go through so many different layers and then it makes just a better album. So then we get Mixtape, gives you those iconic lyrics. It's a little faster towards the end. I think it really kind of started their slow, fast type of style of writing, even though it was very subdued and very kind of understated in that song. It sits at number 4, and I think that was their spot because a lot of their number 4 tracks are their most iconic ones, their most staple type songs. And Mixtape is no different. Jesse is influenced by Morrissey, so I could see why he would throw those references on Mixtape and even throw like self-referential things upon the band and how this person was saying negative things about the band and whatnot. So Mixtape definitely has that element about it. I feel like it's more of a call and response song. So then we get Failure by Design. Failure by Design is one of my favorites on the record, even though most people would be quick to say it's not that great. I think it's a little underrated, to be honest, about it. It has a really good guitar track. It has really good lyrics. But I feel like because they're talking about like filler stuff, it almost feels a little forced. And I can see why people would say that it's not their favorite on the album, which is fine. I'm going to say what my favorite is. I'm not going to tell you what your favorite should be. So let me get The Last Chance to Lose Your Keys. I keep saying this, but it really is a little... You start to realize how one-dimensional it is. You're glad for a couple of reasons. You're glad that this album was so good for its time and so angsty, and you could still kind of point back to those feelings, but you're also glad that they moved on from this, because if they kept writing Your Favorite Weapon over and over and over again, you wouldn't want to listen to it, and these songs definitely have their place. And Last Chance to Lose Your Keys has that element about it. Obviously, it's about a date that kind of goes wrong. And it's interesting how the ending of the song says this is in high school, where it feels so high school and it feels so teenage. And I'm interested why that lyric is in there. It makes you think maybe they were trying to expand a little bit and make it more depth to the songs in an interesting way. So that's definitely something to think about. So they get Logan to Government Center. I remember I was flying up back to school after spring break, and I flew into Logan, and I remember how excited I was to take the T from Logan to Government Center, and then immediately how disappointed I was at how quick it was. It was literally like 2 stops. It was like a 5-minute train wreck. I didn't expect it to be like life-changing or anything. I just thought it was a cool moment in my life where I can be like, oh, this is happening. As far as the song is concerned, what is nice about the song is that it's a little more low tempo, low volume, even though it still has that very angsty feel about it. And I like that they included a sort of a different type of song in the mix. It was nice to have. It was kind of like a mixtape where it kind of shifts gears a little bit. So just softer than the rest of it. So then we get to the backside. This version of the vinyl includes My 9-Run Shotgun, but I won't talk about it. But then we get into the No Seatbelt song, which is their mid-album acoustic track, which is common in pretty much every single album except for Daisy, which completely changed the game pretty much. I really like the No Seatbelt song. I like the words behind it. I like that it's a little more emotional. It's a little more sentimental. The value of it is a lot better than having an angry song about someone who scorned you. This is more about feeling emotionally attached to somebody. So it's definitely one of those songs that kind of registers with me, and a song that I still enjoy, and I'm glad that they have it on the album. It definitely changes the mood before you get into 70 times 7. So No Seatbelt song is definitely one of their best on this album. So 70 times 7, everyone knows the feud between TBS and Brand New. So this is their diss track versus There's No I in Team. The obvious assumption about these songs is that they're about a girl and they're about dating. And this is the one that's clearly about hating your best friend and wanting them to suffer almost. It's so dark. It makes you step back and think, wow, like how big a deal was this? I'm sure it was a big deal, but it gets a little cringy. And obviously these are just lyrics. They obviously wouldn't hurt each other, and they wouldn't do that kind of stuff. But it's definitely interesting to kind of read into the feud and kind of read into how deep and rooted it was. So it's definitely interesting to hear the response that happened. Boy Black His Own Shot was the response to the response. It's definitely a chronicle in their history that makes them a little more interesting and makes them a little more public. So I think for that reason, they kind of stepped back and said, oh, we kind of want to hold on to this persona that we're kind of a little mysterious. So they changed it up. I think that's the best way to describe what happened after the feud. So we get Secondary. Secondary is underrated as well. And it's a feeling of being second best to somebody else. It's fast paced. It's got more guitar than the rest of the, well, I guess it's more like solo-y type of thing. It falls in that category of songs that are good on the album, but when you listen to the songs separately, you're going to stick to the singles and the songs that you like. And I feel like Secondary kind of gets second fiddle. When I first listened to Magazines, I was not a big fan of the song. It was like my consistently skipped song on the album. I just didn't like the intro. I didn't like the start and stop. I didn't like how it sounded. And then I finally convinced myself to listen to the whole thing, and I realized that the ending of the song is a lot better than the start. So I kind of sold it short by not listening to it fully through. And it's such a short song. I don't know why I didn't just listen to it. It's definitely an undervalued song for me. even though some people might consider it to be their favorite song on the album. And I think that's what's special about Your Favorite Weapon, is that there's so many different tracks, there's so many different things going on that it's hard to define what the best song is. So then we get to the closer that is Shoko. Like I was saying with Deja, how Psychedelic Sky feels like an epilogue. Shoko feels like an ending to this album in a positive way, because you have so much anger and you have so much feelings and emotions going on. Not more than a couple emotions, but the emotions are more obvious and demonstrated on this album. That to have this type of song that talks about being 18 forever and staying this age despite all the negative things that come with it is something that the band wanted to express. And it's something interesting because even with maturing and growing older, you always want to hold on to that younger version of yourself. And I feel like Shoko is that definition to a T, and that's why that's the lone song that they'll probably play from this album in the future. And as far as being better or worse than Protect the Sky, I don't know. I'm not going to compare those two because it's so hard. They both mean such different things. They both end the album track-wise, but they have such different feelings about the songs. So that's the track-by-track. As far as the whole album together, this is definitely a faster-paced album than any of the others, even though the others have their moments where they can be faster than Your Favorite Weapon. But it definitely has a lot more pop-punk influences. It has a lot more... It's just fast-paced overall. And when you get those, like Logan or No Seatbelt song in the middle of the album, it slows it down just a little bit, where that way 70x7 really kind of punches you in the face and says, hey, we're still angsty, we're still here. So I kind of like that, how it starts off really fast. As you get to the middle, it kind of tapers off, and then it starts off immediately again with the second half. And of course it ends somber and acoustically. I definitely like the flow of the album. I don't feel a transition between the songs in terms of emotions. I just know that the emotion is pretty constant throughout the whole thing, and it's mainly focused on like two topics, which is what most people are going to write when they're 18. So it's definitely interesting to hear their future releases and realize how much they've grown and how much they took what they did on this album and matured it in a bigger sound and a better way. So that's my review of Your Favorite Weapon. Thanks for checking it out. Check out my other videos. I'm going to be putting up more as we go on, but subscribe if you want to keep up, basically, and thanks for watching.